Well, I am really missing AFL because it is the off season and it is far too long. So we're going to get our fix. Now, 3.5 years ago, I started learning about AFL, and since then, been to Australia, been to 2 prelim games and the grand final, which didn't go so well. So let's not talk about that. But I certainly mentioned a long time ago about how I think the AFL could certainly benefit from a pyramid system to grow the sport. So Riles Macker, a year ago, made this awesome video. Well, I hope it's going to be awesome. So let's discuss AFL pyramid.
As we know, AFL football is one of the most unique sports on the planet.
Very
the
much
rules,
so.
the physical skill set required, and of course the pace of the game.
But it is such a shame, and I have said this after the grand final vlog, it's such a shame because this is not more popular internationally. Yes, it's on TV in the UK, for example, but it isn't really played. Yes, there's technically an England side and whatnot, but it's not really a participation sport here in the UK and most of the world. And it's such a shame because it is the best sport in the world.
However, its league system is just like many sporting leagues across the globe, such as the NFL and NBA, containing one league, one
Yankee
organisation,
sports.
no promotion and relegation, and the top teams compete in a playoffs/finals bracket to become the overall competition's champion. Now, what if the AFL were to implement a promotion and relegation system into Australian rules football? Former Hawthorn president Jeff Kennett and Gary Lyon and SEN have spoken and posed about the thought before. The promotion and relegation system is also known as a football pyramid, and these are displayed in European domestic soccer leagues. Football pyramids are a series of interconnected leagues that has a hierarchical format, with of course promotion and relegation between leagues at different levels.
I'm going to quickly make the point that this is a real discussion-based video, by the way. What makes football in England, especially, but obviously around the world, so special is the pyramid system. It's the jeopardy of relegation. There is always something that you've got to fight for, whether that's winning the league, whether it's promotion, whether it's fighting off relegation. And there is punishment, basically. There is jeopardy for doing badly. And in sports such as AFL and NFL, etc., there is no punishment. There is no jeopardy for being rubbish. You can be awful and actually you're helped. And it just seems mad to me, but it is amazing because every club has their levels. They're obviously always striving to go up. Not everyone is going to win the Premier League, and everyone knows that. So you manage your goals according to where you are on that pyramid. It is special.
This theoretically means one of the smallest clubs from a low tier could climb up all the way to the highest tier. So in this video today, we are going to take a look and explore how this system would be implemented in Aussie rules footy, going over how the teams and tiers would be structured. Now, before we get into it, the AFL would require a massive and near impossible overhaul to structure into a football pyramid system. The gap in the economies, infrastructure, and the playing standard between the AFL and the lower leagues is a substantial difference. These are no doubt circumstances that European and domestic leagues of course face. However, considering that the AFL is only played professionally in one country, the lack of players, talents and athletes also strike as an issue to potentially create a competitive enough system. Perhaps one of the first steps would lead into more overseas recruitment and development. Though expensive, it would benefit the game of Aussie rules in other countries.
It's certainly difficult. Incredibly difficult, and needs a lot of money, like ridiculous amounts of money. Money makes the world go round. Would be incredibly difficult, of course. You need it to become more popular in other countries so that the recruitment system can take place, the training can take place of lower standards. You're basically trying to raise everyone up. But as I said earlier, just because the AFL and maybe the 4th, 5th division or whatever isn't the same ability, well, that's the point of it. That is the point. That's why they would be down there. Now, obviously, you still want to raise it so it's not quite as bad as what is potentially grassroots.
While supplying the sport with more numbers and competition. This leads into the next point of list sizes. To help out with the numbers, list sizes from the AFL clubs to all of the competing clubs in the system would need to be reduced, therefore meaning an individual's position on an AFL list would be harder to retain. This would give the availability of lower league clubs to poach and pick up delisted players.
Good.
One of the next main steps is to form an association that would become the governing body of Australian rules football across all levels of the country. Currently, the AFL Commission controls the AFL competition, the talent pathway programs such as the draft, and many more associated with the sport. The Commission would need to expand its control to all levels and competitions to have the ability to form a football tier system. However, it isn't quite simple as doing what has been explained so far. One big problem still stands in the way of this whole project coming to fruition: money. The lack of worldwide popularity in the sport translates into a lack of funds to transition AFL into a multi-tier system, therefore meaning, as stated earlier, the overhaul is near impossible. Money would need to be funded into areas such as player development, growing of the game domestically and internationally, infrastructure, soft cap, forming of the leagues, broadcast deals, fan bases, and many more. However, this video is containing the fantasies and what-ifs on how a tier system would be structured. There is of course many issues that stand in the way, but let's just pretend that multiple tycoons and moguls invested a large sum for this whole plan to come to fruition.
So I think this is the thing. We're looking at it in the ideal situation. So I don't expect anyone in the comments, oh no, we haven't got enough money. Oh no, it's too far travel. Oh, well, whatever, we don't want it. Those comments are pointless, all right? Those comments are pointless because it's looking at ways to improve AFL. And obviously I'm coming at it from a football side of things where we have a pyramid, and football is the world sport. It's the most popular sport in the world. And I know on the Talk Sport radio stations and things, they have this debate with the guys that run the NFL, saying how big the Super Bowl is. Yeah, but is it? Because actually, if it's only really your country, now the NFL is probably technically bigger than the AFL Grand Final with viewership. However, if it's only one country that really watches it, then is it really that big? It's not global, really, to the same extent as football is. The World Cup final. The World Cup final trumps them all, hands down. But by having these pyramid systems is what's allowed the growth of the sport, as well as obviously money and other contributing factors, obviously.
To kick things off, the pyramid system will contain 4 tiers of football. Because of the lack of clubs, players, and overseas popularity, this is why there is only 4 levels compared to the likes of English soccer, who have multiple levels and tiers.
Like
let's go over the 4 tiers, starting with tier 1, the AFL.
14 maybe?
Pretty straightforward. The top tier is the league we are familiar with of the AFL. The ladder system would be the exact same, 18 teams, top 8 would go through to finals, top 4 get a double chance. The added element of relegation, however, would mean that the team that finishes in 18th place would be relegated into Tier 2.
That's very generous,
moving
only
down
one
to
going
Tier
down.
2, the second division of the Aussie rules system. Tier 2 consists of the new league called the National Australian Football League, or known as the NAFL. Comment down below if you have a more creative name for it.
Does it need to have AFL in it? Because sort of AFL is basically what the sport is. And obviously in the English system, the Premier League, you say the Premier League, the EPL, the English Premier League. You don't say the English football, whatever. So I don't know. Think of it. Think of a better name for the NAFL, maybe. AFL Championship? I don't know.
The league consists of 24 clubs from the top sides across the current Australian leagues, such as the VFL, Queensland AFL, SANFL, WAFL, New South Wales /ACT AFL, Northern Territory, and Tasmania AFL. Because of the quality of sides from the VFL, Sample and Waffle, the league would most likely consist of these teams from these leagues, with maybe a club or two from Sydney or Tasmania. The creation of this tier could also aid the establishment of the Tasmania Devils.
Now, obviously, this video has come out before the actual announcement that there will be a Devils team, which I'm excited for, founding member and all that.
As well as a Canberra and Northern Territory side. Because of their states displaying much lower football quality than the other states, these sides would be created to become a more competitive brand and force in the system. The ladder structure is similar to the AFL. The top 8 makes finals with the exact same final system. The premiership winner gets promoted into the AFL in Tier 1. Out of the 24 teams, the side that finishes last place and 24th will be relegated into Tier 3.
And it's generous.
Moving down the pyramid now to Tier 3. Tier 3 does not contain a single league like the tiers above. It contains 8 separate state leagues, 1 league for each state or territory. The number of teams in each state league won't be specified in this video, as the number depends for each state and territory. The 8 premiership winners from each state and territory's respective league will go into a promotion knockout bracket, with a random draw to determine the bracket and who plays who. The winner out of the whole promotion bracket will be promoted into the NAFL in Tier 2. The team that was relegated from the NAFL in Tier 2 will return to their respective state league in Tier 3.
Okay, I have found an issue. Okay, so if we're saying that if this idea had 8 regional leagues, which makes sense, we have it, the first one starts with basically it's the Conference North or Conference South, so it's below League 2. However, with 8, what happens if all of a sudden one division or one area is dominating more than the others, and they're the team that keeps having the teams promoted, and therefore they don't have any teams left in their league? Or, for example, if one team's weaker and they're the team that keeps coming down, and so their league gets bigger, that may be a potential problem because of there being 8 divisions, basically. That seems like a lot. I don't know how you'd get around it. Maybe would have to be a merger, so actually it's not necessarily just Queensland or not necessarily just Tasmania. Tasmania could join in with Victoria, for example. Adelaide could join in with Perth, maybe. I don't know. But it's maybe making it less divisions, and therefore you wouldn't possibly have that issue.
Finally, the last place sides from each of the 8 state and territory leagues are relegated to Tier 4. Moving on now to the final tier, Tier 4. The lowest tier in the footy pyramid contains all of the regional leagues across the country. Again, all the leagues won't be specified as there are far too many to go over and it is impractical to name them all in this video. Some examples being the Victorian Country Leagues, the AFL Sydney League, AFL Cairns, etc. The premiership winners from every regional league in Australia are then placed into their respective states' championship promotion series. The number of teams competing in each state series varies. Obviously, Victoria would have a lot more teams competing than the Northern Territory series. Depending on the numbers of each state series, a finals knockout is created for every state. The winners from each state's championship bracket are then promoted to Tier 3 and placed in their respective Tier 3 state league. The bottom finishers from Tier 3 are relegated and placed back into their respective regional leagues in Tier 4.
It makes sense. I'm pretty sure it's roughly similar to the English Football League tier system. I said there's like 14 levels. And so grassroots, which I would have played, I've played probably at level 14. I think I've gone up to level 11 that I've played. So it is similar. I can't, 100%, I can't say that's how it is done in England because I can't really remember, because it is quite complicated. It's not complicated when you know how it's done, but if you don't, it is. But it does make sense. And as long as the funds can trickle down, then you get more funding so these teams can travel, maybe, because they may then have to travel a little bit further, possibly. And the coaching can all improve, so the money has to trickle down for sure.
Now, a question might remain for a few people. What about all the club's reserve sides?
There's a reserve
Where would
league.
they place and how would they play their games? It wouldn't make much sense if they would play in the same competition as their counterparts. You are 100% correct, which leads me into my next tiers.
So you either have a reserve league, which we do in the UK. I know in countries such as Spain, I know you like have a Barcelona B and whatnot. They are in the same tier, but they're not allowed to be in the same league as their parent club.
To complete the pyramid, we have our reserves competitions.
Yep,
These reserve
sense.
tiers do not intertwine with the main tiers, but they do have the same final series structures. However, with one big exclusion. As the main aspect with reserve sides is play development, well, mostly to the higher tier sides, promotion and relegation based off reserve sides' performances are not implemented in the reserve system. Instead, teams are relegated or promoted based off their main side's performance.
No.
Let's say a team from the AFL in Tier 2, such as the Woodville West Torrens, were promoted into the AFL in Tier 1. Their reserve side would also be promoted into the AFL Reserves Tier 1 competition, and vice versa.
So in English football, that's not the way it works. So in English football, it's based on a grading system of how good your training facilities are, your coaching development. So you have a certain grade. So are you A, B, C, or tier 1, 2, 3, or whatever it is. And that is which league you are then in, because, you know, it's there's certain clubs that have better development and therefore you need to be playing better clubs. There's no point, for example, if I'll give you an example here, maybe Sydney Swans have a really, really good reserve team and Melbourne Demons have a really rubbish reserve team. You know, the quality is not up there. Well, what is the point of them competing? It's not helping anyone. So yeah, it is basically in England. It's on a grade system of your facilities and you know things like that. So I don't agree with this. This is the one thing I don't agree with. The reserves should not be necessarily going up and down in relation to their parent side.
This system is implemented so that there is more symmetry with the pyramid. Reserve sides are playing who they should, and so there isn't a reserve side, let's say, playing 2 tiers lower than their main side, and vice versa.
Doesn't matter.
So there you have it. There is the Australian rules football pyramid system explained. For a handful of people, it might have been difficult to understand the whole thing, which is totally fine. So to add some fluidity to the video and explain the scenarios more, we will use an example of a Tier 4 team going all the way up to Tier 1. Let's choose the East Ringwood Football Club, for example, as, I don't know, I was born there, I guess. They currently compete in the Premier Division of the Eastern Football League. If they win the flag of the Eastern Football League, they represent their league and go to the Victorian State Championship Series. For hypotheticals and to help out the example, let's say there are 16 regional leagues in Victoria. Ringwood competes in the knockout bracket with 15 other premiership winning clubs from their leagues. The bracket is randomly drawn, and if Ringwood go all the way and win, they are promoted to Tier 3. They are now in the Victorian State League in Tier 3. If they go on to win the flag in their Tier 3 state league, they represent Victoria and take part in the National Promotion Knockout Bracket, competing with the winners from the 7 other states and territories leagues. The bracket is then randomly drawn, and if Ringwood go all the way and win, they are promoted to Tier 2, the NAFL.
Very simple.
East Ringwood are now in Tier 2 in the NAFL, or National Australian Football League, with 23 other teams. If they make the top 8, go all the way and win it, you guessed it, they are promoted to Tier 1, the AFL.
So what is amazing about the pyramid system is, yes, most teams have their level. However, there's always that opportunity to go up the tier system. There is always that opportunity. So, for example, Eastleigh Football Club, which is where I live, okay? Eastleigh used to be in the Wessex League, which is Tier 7, if I remember rightly. So then they won that, and then they went to the Southern League Division 1, then the Southern League Premier, then the Conference South. Now they're in the conference. So they've gone from tier 7 to tier 5? Sort of. Yeah, because each tier in the UK, I'm pretty sure that some of the tiers, or is it Wessex? Anyway, you get my point. They've gone up. They've gone up 4 or 5 divisions in a short period of time, and actually, there is always the opportunity then to actually make the Premier League. Now, they won't, granted, unless they got a ridiculous amount of money, were able to build an infrastructure and club players were improved. But actually, that's what's incredible. And you've seen it. Like Bolton Wanderers, staple Premier League team. Now where are they? Divisions below, a few divisions below. It's fantastic what can happen.
So hopefully that example given gives the tier system a bit of a better understanding for you. After now viewing what the AFL pyramid would look like, probably a big question still remains. How would the recruitment and the AFL draft
get rid of the draft?
Work? Would each tier have their own drafts?
No.
Would under 18 competitions such as the NAB League be removed?
Yes.
Would drafts be removed entirely and a transfer market and player values system be in place? Those stated are all feasible ideas. But because recruitment and the AFL draft plays an enormous part on the sport, as well as the popularity, the AFL draft, rookie draft, mid-season and pre-season drafts would still be in place and existence, meaning the top-rated youngsters and mature-age players in the country would be able to play Tier 1 footy.
I don't agree at all. Do not agree at all. So actually what you find is a lot of young players come from the lower leagues. And it's actually how the top tier teams, the Premier League teams, Championship teams or whatever, actually buy those youngsters from the lower division teams. And that money is so important for lower division teams. So if all of a sudden the best teams are getting all the best youngsters, well, that is a financial problem that potentially the smaller clubs will find, because the smaller clubs survive by growing their own players. Southampton is my football team, and we are known as a selling club. We are probably never going to win the Premier League. But what we're really good at is we have a fantastic academy and we grow players. Yes, sometimes we get them in at a young age, but we grow them, sell them, and then that's what makes us the money. And so that's what keeps us going. We grow players, sell players, reinvest. You wouldn't be able to do that if you have this. So I do not agree with having if you were having a pyramid system, you would have to get rid of a draft. You cannot have the draft because the smaller clubs need the finances to be able to participate.
However, this creates a dilemma. Because of the 18th place team in the AFL usually getting the first overall pick, they will not have access to the draft nor the picks since they have been relegated to Tier 2. Because of this, the first overall pick would instead go to the team that has been promoted from Tier 2 into the AFL. It creates sort of a reward for the team being promoted and a punishment for the team being relegated.
I think relegation is a punishment enough.
Video, list sizes would need to be reduced to supply numbers to lower tiers and to make the AFL a more exclusive and high quality league. This would mean that the amount of selections in all drafts would be reduced. The reducement of selections creates advantages and disadvantages with a scenario like this. The downside being athletes and players having a harder chance to be drafted, but it does provide a lot of upside.
Raises standards though.
Players that are unfortunate to not pick up an AFL contract can be picked up by a side from the NAFL in Tier 2 or even an AFL reserve side and play their profession there. So to recap, the drafts in the AFL we all know today would still be in place, but with fewer selections, and the lower tier sides would have the chance to pick up players unlucky not to be given an AFL contract, as well as the delisted players. And finally, the Tier 2 team that gets promoted gets the Tier 1 relegated sides draft picks. The transition from the league we know now to a fully functioning football tiered system seems like a grueling and near impossible task. The amount of money needed, as well as the small and large things needed to be changed or discussed that wasn't stated in this video. Player top-ups, broadcast deals for lower leagues, changing of players' salaries, Memberships? Would there be a national cup? The soft cap? Stadiums? Financial scenarios for almost everything new? The list goes on. It's a very overwhelming topic to think about all the variables. Let's not forget one of the main ones, the fans and the community. AFL has such a rich and heavy cultured history, so many supporters would certainly be opposed to the idea of this happening.
They would be opposed to it because of the risk of their team getting relegated. That's simply why. I don't see any other valid point that any fans could make that would reject something like this. I get it, but no, you can't say finances, because what we're doing is we're assuming that the money would come in. We're making the assumption. The only fear is their team getting relegated because you're not used to it. That's the thing, because you're not used to it. And so it's like, when your parents said your eyes would go square if you watched too much telly. It was nonsense. People fear change, right? But actually, it may be for the better, to grow the sport that I love, that you love.
Too many might seem it as an unnecessary addition to a sport we adore, or a fan's favourite team being relegated out of the AFL. There are obviously many red flags from AFL fans' perspectives, as they are, and I am, the people that keep the sport alive with its support. So most likely, there would be protests to those against. But maybe, if a transition like this were to happen, it would create a whole new exciting chapter in the Australian rules football book. New teams, new fans, more players from overseas, the AFL becoming a harder league to play in, meaning a more entertaining and high quality sport, more popularity. It's a topic that really makes you think on all the what ifs and variables. Will there ever be something like this for the AFL? Nearly 100% no would have to be the answer.
Yeah.
As stated many times, the lack of money, people, worldwide popularity, and financial scenarios would make the transition next to near impossible. But this video today showed what the sport would look like as a whole and what would need to be changed if ever the AFL were to introduce a promotion and relegation system.
A fantastic video, actually. Well done, Riles. That was a brilliant video. Now, I don't agree with everything that Riles said. The tier system, fantastic. I think it would be incredible. If you want the sport to grow, then I think it's something that is a must, because a lot of things here, would mean that the progression of the sport, progression of players, the quality would improve, because you'd be improving the lower levels, which is what you need to then boost everything up. Obviously, you need a lot of money, and yeah, granted, 99.9% chance it would not happen. 99.9999% chance. The fans wouldn't want it because they would fear being relegated. But actually, think about what it would do for the clubs below. Oh my God, the investment. So, if it was this system with one going up, imagine how much just that promotion, even if it was just a promotion for 1 year and then they got relegated straight away, actually the investment from TV, for example, wow, that would improve the club, whether it's the stadium, whether it's the training facilities, whether it's, what they can pay their staff and players. Wow, that just to think of it. And I can say this because I know, because I'm a football fan in England. Granted, there are obviously some cons. There are obviously some cons. You could have a club that completely plummets. I get it. So you have to have a solid. You would have to have a solid financial plan and just development plan. So it's not easy. It's not clear cut, and there would be so many different ways that this could work, which I think would probably get in the way of it actually happening, as well as obviously finances and things. But if there was all of a sudden a lot of money, it could happen. It really could. And as I said, if you want the sport to grow around the world and just grow in general and improve quality, this is definitely the way forward. Now, it's a discussion. It's a discussion. I don't want people in the comments saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Grow up. Grow up. It's a discussion. Discuss. Talk. That's what we should do to try and make things better. Okay? Make things better. Oh, nothing is perfect as it is. Football in England is not perfect. There are always things to improve. So open your mind, and thank you for watching. Riles, fantastic video. I will catch you next time. Roll on the AFL season. I'm struggling without it.